Emily had always believed that life had a way of surprising people when they least expected it. Some surprises came with laughter and joy, while others arrived like storms, loud, frightening, and overwhelming. For most of her 35 years, she tried to keep her life steady, predictable, and calm. She loved her husband Michael deeply and often said that marrying him was the most solid decision she ever made. He was steady, thoughtful, and kind, a man who didn't raise his voice easily and who always seemed to think before he acted. They had been married for 10 years, and although not without challenges, they had built a home together that was full of warmth and trust. Yet, as Emily would soon learn, even the strongest bonds can be tested in ways no one can predict. It began one quiet evening. Emily was folding laundry in the bedroom while Michael sat at the kitchen table, balancing the checkbook. The house was calm, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. Emily hummed softly as she worked, not realizing that within days, her entire world would feel as though it had tilted on its axis. A phone call came that night, one that brought news no one ever expects to hear. Her younger brother, Daniel, had been in a car accident out of state. He was alive but injured, and the doctors needed family to come quickly. Emily's heart dropped, her hands trembling as she gripped the phone. Michael rushed to her side immediately, holding her as she cried, whispering steady reassurances. But the fear, the helplessness, and the uncertainty of what she would face at the hospital filled Emily with dread. Michael insisted he would go with her, but work obligations tied him down for the first few days. Emily didn't want to travel alone, yet she didn't know who to ask. That's when two men from their community, David, a longtime friend of Michael's, and Ryan, a neighbor who had always been kind, offered to accompany her. They knew how much Daniel meant to Emily, and they didn't want her to face this difficult journey by herself. At first, Michael was hesitant. It wasn't easy for him to accept that his wife would be traveling with two other men while he stayed behind, even though he trusted Emily completely. But when he saw the sincerity in their eyes and the determination Emily had to reach her brother quickly, he agreed. The drive was long and tense. Emily sat in the back seat of Ryan's car, staring out the window as the lights of passing towns blurred together. David sat in the passenger seat, occasionally turning back to offer her a small smile or a comforting word. Neither of them tried to fill the silence with unnecessary talk. They simply gave her space while letting her know she wasn't alone. When they arrived at the hospital, Emily rushed inside, her heart pounding. Michael had already arranged things with the hospital staff by phone, so she was guided quickly to Daniel's room. Seeing her brother lying there, bruised but breathing, brought tears streaming down her face. She held his hand, whispering his name, feeling the rush of relief that he was alive. David and Ryan stood respectfully in the hallway, ready if she needed them, but never intruding. Hours passed, and Emily found herself exhausted. She hadn't eaten, her body running on pure adrenaline. That's when Ryan quietly appeared with a bottle of water and a sandwich, insisting she take a moment to care for herself. David sat nearby, offering gentle conversation about ordinary things, just enough to distract her from the beeping machines and antiseptic smell. It wasn't until later that night, when Michael finally arrived after taking a late flight, that the moment of tension unfolded. Michael entered the waiting room and found Emily sitting between David and Ryan. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, just sitting quietly, their presence a shield of support. But the sight of two men standing so close to his wife in his absence struck a chord deep inside him. For a split second, he wondered how it must have looked, how others might perceive it. Emily noticed the flicker in Michael's eyes, the way his jaw tightened. She stood immediately, rushing into his arms, whispering how much she had missed him. And it was in that moment, with his wife pressed tightly against him and the two men standing silently by, that Michael realized something important. They hadn't replaced him. They had protected her until he could get there. They had stood by her when he couldn't, and for that, he owed them gratitude. Over the next several days, the four of them formed an unexpected bond. Emily never forgot the way David stayed late into the night, so she wouldn't be alone in the waiting room, or the way Ryan quietly arranged rides and meals so she wouldn't have to think about the details. Michael, too, began to see their presence not as a threat, but as a gift. He watched the way Emily leaned on them in moments of weakness, and instead of jealousy, he felt a deep sense of relief that others cared for her as much as he did. When Daniel was finally stable enough to talk and even laugh a little, Emily felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. She held his hand, grateful beyond words. And as she looked at Michael, David, and Ryan, she realized that life had shown her something profound. Sometimes love is not only found in the vows of marriage, but also in the kindness of community, the willingness of others to stand beside you in your darkest hours. When they returned home, Emily carried with her not just the relief of her brother's recovery, but also the memory of how 3 men, her husband, her friend, and her neighbor, had each stood by her side in different but equally important ways. Michael had given her his trust, David had given her his steady friendship, and Ryan had given her his quiet strength. She often told the story later, not as a tale of suspicion or drama, but as a reminder of what it means to be supported. 2 men stood by me in front of my husband, she would say, and instead of causing distance, it brought us all closer. For Emily, that experience was not about who stood where, but about how love and loyalty can come from unexpected places. And in the end, it deepened her marriage, strengthened her friendships, and reminded her that sometimes the most unexpected chapters of life are also the most beautiful.